Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And Music Video Sins writer, Barrett Scher.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
Guys, we're going to be talking about 1976 for a brief moment today. We talked about 1975 in the last podcast, ultimately awarding the best movie of 75 to Jaws. Now, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there who will be like, hey, it's really this, it's really that, whatever. But that's what we came up with. Anyway, 1976, we're going to do the same thing. And Jeremy, would you like to take it away?
You talking to me?
Because you had the talent to become a good fighter.
Just follow the money.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Sure. 76 was a good year. In general, I turned one, started eating solid foods.
Yeah.
And in the world of film, I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like there's one obvious frontrunner, and then there's just a bunch of either high quality movies or culturally impactful movies or cult movies that I think that there's 8 or 9. I think one of you could argue for, and I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it. But the elephant in the room is Rocky, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't remember if it won, but it was nominated for an Oscar, right?
Yeah. It won Best Picture.
Yeah. And Stallone was nominated for writing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And he might have even won, but although I don't know about that, I just know it won Best Picture.
Now, this movie is, I think, a combination of quality and cultural impact that makes it, in my opinion, the front runner, because it almost defined the sports movie for 30 years, in my opinion. But for the sake of arguing other films from 76, because it is really a pretty good year, we have All the President's Men in 1970.
Yeah.
And no one's going to take any flack from me for arguing for that one. And I waited a long time, way too long to see it. I was a lover of film for a good 8 or 9 years before I got around to it, and I really regretted it because it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I will let one of you guys take over from here. I don't want to name them all.
Yeah, you named probably the 2 very best ones there. Then there's Taxi Driver, which of course is that's a huge influential film and everything, and it's such a unique film. I don't know if I've seen anything like it since.
Yeah,
either.
it's really distinct.
Yeah, and it's I think there's a lot of stories behind all that. Like Paul Schrader wrote the script, and he was, it was just one of those, he was, I don't know if he was on anything or whatever, but I think he was sort of experiencing the Travis Bickle life himself, kind of, when he was writing it or whatever. I think he felt some of that loneliness or whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that stuff came through into the script. Now, I don't know the full story, but I know that something was going on with the screenwriting of it. And then, but then, De Niro himself, actually went and, became a taxi driver for a while and stuff to prepare for the role and everything. And Scorsese was still in his drug-addled years.
Yeah, so De Niro was pretty method for a while there, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. He did the method for a really long time, probably into the 80s, and then I think he started to sort of waver from that after a while, because I think that just takes it out of you.
Yeah, he's still method for Meet the Fockers. He's just sits around as a lazy old man.
Yeah. Well, and Rocky and Bullwinkle, he clearly experienced the life of
totally.
Yeah,
committed to that role.
Yeah, he did. But Taxi Driver's up there, and here's another one I hear a lot about this movie, and it's something that we'll never see again in movies. But Bad News Bears, which is a super racist, foul mouth. It was a movie made for kids, and it's got it's the worst movie for kids. But nobody cared. Nobody cared back then. about what your kids saw and everything, but you would never be able, and they did try to make that movie in 2005. Richard Linklater directed it, and it loses something in the translation when you can't say all the things that you normally would say.
As a complete non sequitur, I saw Revenge of the Nerds on TV like a few days ago. That movie is just full of criminal behavior. Like all the shit they do, like the Aaron Andrews peeping cameras that they all gather around and watch. And it's I don't think anything they do in that movie is legal.
It was encouraged back then.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, look at these guys. They're getting free looks at naked girls, aren't they awesome? And
it started with Animal House and everything, where you had Belushi looking in through the window with the ladder and everything, and then Porky's did it, and it was sort of it's okay to peep on women, all right? So let's have it in every movie.
Those boys,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Revenge of the Nerds would have to be totally different today. Like if you tried to remake that.
Yeah. It would be surrounded by just more nerd culture than usual.
It would probably be like Silicon Valley or something.
Yeah. We've gotten off our 1976 discussion here. Barrett, do you have a couple?
1976 was a great year for horror. Between The Omen and Carrie, the two of the most. You could argue about Carrie, but it's essentially a horror movie.
Yeah.
Two of the most influential horror movies, certainly in the 70s, and both involving, underage kids.
Yeah. Demon kids.
Demon kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Carrie, talk about something that you probably have never seen before. And, besides the ill-advised remake, like you haven't really seen it since. Like that's just kind of that's a unique movie too.
Yeah. Opening credit sequence full of live nude girls. Like you would never see that. Yeah.
All this entire episode is going to be about naked women.
Absolutely.
No one will be surprised.
Yeah. Well, it's about time, damn it.
Yeah. And The Omen was terrific and very rewatchable, and it may just be because of Gregory Peck. Like
Gregory Peck. Yeah, that's another one that had an ill-advised remake as well.
Oh yeah.
I'm surprised that all three of us have named two, and none of us has talked about Network yet.
Yeah, I know. Holy crap!
Because this, like Rocky, and even All the President's Men, I think is super high quality, but also it's a cultural kind of touchstone film that a lot of people of that generation point to as kind of that whole "I'm not going to take it anymore" speech. It struck a nerve.
And it became very predictive of current media culture, right?
That's what I was about to say, is that Network sort of predicted what we have become. It's become where people are more interested in being entertainers than actually giving us the news or anything like that. It's when a network is turned on its head by someone who's super popular with their opinions, but they're not giving you actual facts or anything that is worthwhile in the world or whatever. It's just a spirit and fun and that type of thing. And then later on, broadcast news sort of touched on that.
Yeah. But we'll talk about that in a few podcasts.
Absolutely.
Anything else that we need? I have a couple, but I want to see if you guys want to bring anything else up. That
the only other one that I can think of on this, and you wrote out a list for us, and that's very kind of you.
You're welcome.
Is Logan's Run. That's the other ones now I haven't seen. I haven't seen A Star Is Born, and I haven't seen Marathon Man, unfortunately, and I know that's a really good movie. I have seen the King Kong that came out this year. It was not very good, but Logan's Run is a movie that's it's another movie that's inspired a lot of other stuff, like The Island and what's another one that's kind of done that. But yeah, it's that dystopian future, but it's a dystopian future that I like, not like this Hunger Games insurgent nonsense. But they're sort of people who are striving to have a better life on the outside. They're promised so much goodwill, and once they do these certain things, they'll be able to go out into the world and everything. And then they find out things aren't what they seem. And right. And Logan's Run is one of those movies. I mentioned The Island, which is basically a remake of that movie. But there's a few others that have tried to do that too, and I just can't name them right now.
And I think The Island is one of Michael Bay's most enjoyable films.
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy. How like, I mean, even, and you look at The Island, there's still a lot of that Michael Bay-ness in it. But it's got a better story than anything that he's ever done before.
Yeah, well, and he's got two leads that mostly because of their characters' situations that end up with really engaging performances, I think. Anyway, I almost made my dark horse choice the outlaw Josie Wales. It's one of the Eastwood westerns that I feel like I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but I love it. It's just really engaging, and a lot of movies have tried to do the sort of revenge arc that this movie does almost perfectly. But it's just fringe enough. I don't think I can make that my final vote, but I did want to mention it.
Especially with all these heavyweights here, they're just, I mean, it's crazy like how good this year is.
Barrett, anything else you?
Yeah, if you want a dark horse, and speaking of racism, did you ever see a movie called Murder by Death?
No, I never saw that.
It's a Neil Simon play or Neil Simon script it's a murder mystery, a comedic murder mystery. It almost reminds me of Clue, except, a little bit earlier, which I think we all love. But it has like Peter Falk and Peter Sellers and Maggie Smith.
Oh, wow.
And a few other, Alec Guinness, Obi-Wan himself. And it's really, really funny. Peter Falk is kind of like doing slapstick. Truman Capote is in this, by the way.
Oh, wow.
He's the main, the guy that gets them together for this an investigation. He invites a lot of private eyes over and everything. And I saw it a lot when I was a kid and found it very, very enjoyable. And it's a good, like, kind of farce, slapstick, comedy, murder mystery. So it's a good dark horse from 76.
If there's anything that's going to come out of this is that I'm going to have to go watch Outlaw Josie Wales and Murdered by Death by after this. I'm going to have to find a way to watch those. So I've learned something new today.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to cast our lots?
I have mine locked in.
All right. So do you want to go first then?
No, well, I guess. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Well, I went last time and ended up being a deciding vote. So we should maybe switch up who goes last each time.
Okay.
So somebody besides me go last.
Okay.
Barrett, why don't you go last? I'll go first.
Okay, go.
You guys ever use this app called Flipchart?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You rate movies back and forth, and it's 2 at a time, and you have to select which one you like better.
Yeah.
I did this a long time ago when it first started, and apparently, like, it eventually gets to your number one over a series of hundreds of selection. And Rocky was my favorite above virtually anything else, which surprised me, actually. But I love this movie so much. And even though there's a lot of strong competition, I don't know how you could go anywhere but Rocky.
Man, I used that website for a good couple of months. And that's how I figured out The Matrix was my favorite movie. The same kind of thing you're talking about, where I never let another movie beat it in a battle. And I was like, I must really adore this movie. So yeah, Chris is going last, and we just robbed him of his chance to be the deciding vote because I'm going Rocky. I'm sorry.
That's totally fine.
I was locked in before I even listed any of the other movies from that year. That's at the top of the list, and I went, oh, that's going to win. And then I listed out a bunch of other good movies. And I love all the President's Men. I almost went for Network, but it's got to be Rocky.
And it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I'm not going to say Rocky, but I would like to say about Rocky is that you can see the evolution or devolution of movies through the Rocky sequels. Like, the first Rocky is amazing. It's obviously made in the 70s, where they cared about character development and all that, and somehow they keep it entertaining way before the fight even happens. Whereas when it gets down to Rocky IV, which of course is everybody's favorite cult bad movie, really, it's you're not. They know that you just want to see the fight, so it's like a bunch of montages and 80s songs and all that other stuff. And you're in between there, you got Rocky 2 and 3, which are they're decent movies or whatever, but you're getting in. I think Rocky 2 was right at the end. It was in 1979, I think, that came out. And then Rocky 3 is obviously 80s, you know, because you got Mr. T and all all this stuff. It doesn't make any sense, but it's funny because, you know, once you get to Rocky 4, you're like, how did that first movie? How did they get this from that first movie? You know?
Yeah, it's as shocking as the Rambo evolution.
right. But guys, the movie I've seen the most out of this group is All the President's Men. And it's my favorite one. I love how this movie develops and shows you how Woodward and Bernstein go through their investigation and how hard it is, and how you can feel their frustration, but you can feel their elation every time that they finally get somebody to talk.
Yeah.
And it's in this sort of genre of movies that I group Quiz Show into this, because Quiz Show's sort of the same way. Rob Morrow's little his character goes through and tries to find somebody who will speak on the record and everything, and nobody wants to talk for whatever reason. Once you get to, you know, all the little tricks and all that they use to get people to talk and everything, and then, you know, you talk about culturally significant and everything, you know, I think this is when people first really started distrusting the government more than they ever thought that they would. With the book, and of course Watergate first, but then the movie itself just showed you how, you know, if you weren't familiar with the entire story, you realized, you know, oh, government can be kind of bad guys. It can be kind of dicks sometimes. So I've seen All the President's Men probably at least 15 to 20 times. So I'm going to vote that, but Rocky will win.
All right. Well,
ding ding.
I think that was a good, high quality discussion there, and so now we've just elected Jaws and Rocky as the two best films of the first 2 years that I was alive.
That's right, and you know, and you know, I think your critical selections would be more in line of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Taxi Driver, or you know, that would probably be the real ones with critics. But for us, we're leaning a little bit more populist on that.
Well, you know, that's how we do.
That's right. Anyway, so Rocky the winner. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat of our discussion. We are going to talk about good moments from bad movies and bad moments from good movies. I believe this was asked as a question to us on Twitter at one point.
I think so.
Or in some form it has, or whatever. But Jeremy, do you want to take it away and start with whatever?
Bad.
Let's start on a down note and rip on some bad moments in movies that are good.
All right.
And then we'll finish. I'm most curious to hear everybody's good moments from bad movies, but we'll start with the reverse. And it's funny that you just talked about Quiz Show, because the first one on my list, bad moments in good movies, I wrote Rob Morrow's accent in Quiz Show.
Yeah, which is what people could not get over when this movie came out.
And I am able to get over it. I love this movie. I love everyone in it. I even love his performance. I just don't like that accent. And for whatever reason, maybe because I'm not, like, I don't really have a strong accent. I'm not from, was he doing a New York or
it's a Boston, but it's so like stereotypical Boston. Like it's what a kid would emulate if they first heard a Patriots fan talking or something.
So I'm not offended by that because I'm not from there, but it is maybe one of the worst things about a movie that I think is top notch.
Yeah, but I will say, and you're right, this accent is not good, but there's a point in the movie where Morrow confronts Ray Fiennes, and it's one of the best scenes of the movie too. Mm-hmm. But I always I love his accent for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because the delivery is just that, has that, I don't know, a little flourish on it or whatever, but I just love when he's like, hey, don't treat me like I'm some member of your goddamn fan club. You can tell me that everything I got the answers, but you, and I just love the way he says it in that. But yeah, it's not good. It's one of those where, if there was one thing we could just tone down a bit,
you can even hear a little bit of Ray Fiennes' non-English creep in some of his delivery.
Yeah.
And I don't care because I love there's so many powerful one-on-one scenes like you just described, and like the one where he has with his dad in the classroom where he confesses. And just really good acting and a really interesting story. And anyway, somebody else take it away. Give me a bad moment from a good movie.
Barrett, you want to take one?
As bad moments from good movies go, this is absolutely first on my list. And nobody is a bigger fan, except for maybe the two of you, of A Few Good Men than me. But there's a moment in that movie where Demi Moore and Kevin Pollak are having a moment in the courtroom after they get done with the preliminary hearing or something like that. And Demi Moore asks Kevin Pollak, why do you hate them so much, the two Marines that they're defending? And he says, they beat up on a weaker kid. You know, that's you can hide behind all this Marine bullshit, but basically that's what it is. They beat up on a younger, weaker kid. And then he asks Demi Moore, he's like, why do you like them so much? And she has this ridiculous speech, almost prepared. She says, because they stand on a wall and they say, nothing's going to hurt you tonight. Not on my watch. And I'm like, God damn it, woman. What the fuck was that? It's awful. It's awful. Yeah. And otherwise a brilliant movie, but God, I hate that. I hate that line.
You can feel Aaron Sorkin yelling in your ear on that one right there. You know, it's funny you bring up A Few Good Men, and just as an aside, because there is one moment that I'm, you know, this is one moment in the movie that I don't like at all. And this is after all the amazingness between Cruise and Nicholson and everything, is when he's like, and you're going to jail, you son of a bitch. And I've never liked that. You know, it's like we you know, you won. Yeah. You didn't need to say that, you know, you had your moment, but now you have to do that crowd pleasing son of a bitch moment, you know? So that's the one thing I didn't like about it, but I never really thought about that. That Kevin Pollak Demi Moore scene. Now when I watch it, I'm going to be like, yep, he's right.
Oh, man. Chris?
Okay. All right. So I have, I don't know where to start. Okay.
This is a fun topic.
So I love The Natural. It's a movie that that's another movie I've seen millions and millions of times or whatever. But there's a scene that is both awesome and horrible at the same time. And it's really just a movie mistake. But once you realize it's a movie mistake, it sort of drains the power out of it a little bit. There's I don't know, how familiar are you guys with this movie?
Oh man, I wrote a rap about it in middle school with my best friend.
There you go.
I watched it probably 12 or 13 times.
Yeah. This was like in my era when our family got HBO, and The Natural and Neverending Story used to always play over and over again. And like, that's where I watched those movies all the time. But The Natural has and I didn't think about it then, and I probably didn't think about it for many, many years after that. But there's a scene, it's towards the end of Roy Hobbs dating Memo Paris, who's played by Kim Basinger. They go to Chicago. He's struggling. He struck out like a couple of times. And then, Glenn Close, his old girlfriend, stands up in the stands, and Roy sees it, and he's like, all right, so he hits this ball, into the Wrigley Field clock or whatever. Big, huge, dramatic moment. Wow, he hit this ball in the clock and he won the game. He runs around and there's like all these photographers and everything taking his picture at the end. He's finally out of his slump, but that can't possibly happen if you're the visiting team.
Yeah.
You can't win the game on one swing of the bat. And it just bothers you after a while. You're just like, yeah, that's amazing, but it wouldn't have ended the game. Yeah, game's not over. Like, I would have loved, it would be great to have, like, somehow go back and be able to make that scene, and, like, you see the Cubs players, and they're like, nice hit, hot shot. We get the bottom of the ninth now, dickhead,
Jesus. I've never even thought of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I should do a whole new verse to my rap about that.
I'll tell you what, man. I used to have this movie on VHS, and that scene, with Randy Newman's score and all that other type of stuff going on in it, I rewound it and watched it 100 times. I love the anticipation of it. I love everything, the dramatic tension. And then he hits that ball and you're like, yeah, awesome. He's out of his slump and everything. But yeah, man, later on in life, you're like, Jesus, he's the visiting player. There's no way that could be the winning homer.
There's actually a weird rule at Wrigley that if you hit the clock, the game's over.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can't possibly go on with this game now. The clock's
What is a movie all about baseball? Missed that.
Right. Well, and the very next day, and this is another thing. This is if you're like really love baseball and you pay attention to it or whatever. The next day, he hits 4 home runs in a game, and almost it shows him in one swing hitting a ball. So like it's a slow motion swing that would make Zack Snyder proud. And like he hits the ball and like during that slow motion, you hear 4 different calls of home runs he's hit. And that last one he hits is clearly a pop up. Like it's like it would have gone in the infield or whatever, but it's being considered a home run. But so anyway, love that movie, but there are those things where you're like, one day we'll have to send that movie.
All right. So my turn. I'm going to go with from Snowpiercer, movie that I love that is now on one of these movie channels on my cable that I've been watching a lot lately in the background. But the I Know How Baby Tastes scene. Now, there are a number of moments in this movie where I will forgive a moviegoer from just kind of going, what's going on right now? I can even forgive somebody not liking the movie because of a couple of those moments, but this is the kicker for me. This is the one I literally just stop watching when the scene comes on. I get what they're going for, but it's the juxtaposition of this really heartfelt emotion on his face and the literal words, I know how baby tastes. And I just can't reconcile them because one is serious and one is clearly a joke. It's just, I don't know. It just chugs the whole movie to a halt for me. I don't know how you guys feel.
In the middle of an interminable speech too, at the very end of the thing, and you're like, really? We can spend 8 minutes here just sitting here like pontificating about how baby tastes?
Well, and that's where Snowpiercer actually starts to fall down the cliff is after that scene, because even when Ed Harris shows up, and I love Ed Harris, that scene just takes forever. It's just so long. And that was the one moment I remember watching it in the theater and I was kind of squirming a bit because it just lasts so long. But the thing that you're probably tapping into with that, I know how baby tastes thing is that there's no subtlety to it, and I guess you have 2 rules of thumb on that. Like, how can eating babies be subtle? But I think you could have made that a little bit, where at least you imply it more than you just go right out and say it.
Right, no joke.
It's so distasteful, no pun intended.
Just have him trail off. I know the taste of boom, you're done.
Yeah, that's it.
That is not a subtle movie in any way, really.
No, it's not.
No,
especially
the good thing and a bad thing for it.
Well, especially the Allison Pill classroom scene is probably like the most in your face thing that they throw in.
Stop. Every single time I hear those little children sing, "What happens if the engine stops? We all freeze and die." Like it's a happy camp song. It gets me every time. I just giggle.
Yeah. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I don't think it bothered me as much as it did you, but it is one of those moments where you're just like,
Plus, as we pointed out in the Sins video, he fucking wastes the world's last cigarette. Right? Yes, it's been gifted to him by this guy. Out of the kindness of his heart, he lights that shit and then just lets it burn while he tells the story.
Yeah. What the hell, man?
That's rude. All right, Barrett, you're up.
There's been a lot of talk about mansplaining recently in the media, and one of the most jarring bits of mansplaining that I've seen recently was in Gravity.
Okay.
So Gravity being, generally thought of as kind of an icon of feminism, Sandra Bullock riding the ship literally and getting back to the earth. But it takes her almost dying and a ghost cameo from George Clooney to really put her in the right spot.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That scene kills me. It's just like, oh, hey, I'm going to knock on the door. Oh, what's he doing out there? All right.
Yeah.
I'm good. Yeah, open it up and everything. And he comes in and basically, sets her straight and just says, all right, this is what you need to do. All right, see ya.
Yeah.
And it takes you out of otherwise like almost to me like a perfect movie.
You're absolutely right about that. The problem with that is that it makes it, like once you find out, oh, okay, he was just ghost George Clooney or whatever. It's like, oh, well, she figured that out on her own, but not really. She needs,
she's hypoxic.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just another excuse to throw Clooney back into the movie after he dies or whatever.
Right.
And, sorry, spoilers, but it's just another excuse because, I think it's one of those desperate moves where you're like, well, Clooney's gone. What are we going to do? Is it going to be Sandra Bullock this whole time? Okay, we got to put Clooney back in.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, it's a cheat. It's a cheat to me. Like, all right, you've been following these rules this entire time, these very complex rules, generally, except for whatever Neil deGrasse Tyson points out. But yeah, I mean, and then this kind of magical entity, Clooney ex machina.
It really is. It
might as well have been her daughter saying, "Mommy, come home."
Oh yeah. All right. So, man, there's so many. I don't think we're ever going to get around to all of them. But
I don't know.
Okay. Here's a simple one. In the movie Rounders. Now, I don't know if people consider this like a great movie. Like, I think people who play poker think it's a great movie, and then probably everybody else is like, this piece of shit. Yeah. But anyway, I think Rounders is a great movie. So, there's a scene, and I actually have seen explanations, heard explanations later, but there's a scene. Matt Damon has broken up with Gretchen Mol in the movie. Gretchen Mol actually has left the apartment, taken everything. And then, so he's in a little bit of a depression moment, and he's sitting there watching 1987 World Series of Poker and all this other stuff. Famke Janssen shows up. And watches the end of it with him and everything. And like, then Damon's like, all right, well, I gotta go. And Famke Janssen's like, I could stay. And she's like, clearly like, let's do this. and Damon, inexplicably, this is Famke Janssen, like 6 foot, like, goddess, one of the hottest women ever. And he's like, no, I have to, and he leaves her there. Like, I'm sitting there like, I can't believe this. This is the most unbelievable thing. Now, I did listen to the commentary on this, and on the commentary, they actually addressed this. Brian Koppelman, who is he's one of the people behind Billions that's going on right now. He wrote Rounders, and like, they said that when they wrote the character that Famke Janssen played, it wasn't supposed to be like this drop dead gorgeous woman. It was supposed to be someone who's, a little bit of a plain Jane or whatever, maybe a little bit on the other side of it. But still, no one on the set realized it was Famke Janssen once this scene started, and they let it happen anyway. And I feel like if you just didn't want to have a sex scene between the two of them, or at least imply it or whatever, you should have just cut that part out and just said, and she could have just been sitting on the couch going, well, I'll see you later, and that would have been it, and we would have been fine. And
they treat that Johnny Chan video like it's foreplay, though.
Oh, they do. They do.
Yeah, he won it 4 times.
Yeah, look what he does. Yeah, look at the control. It's amazing.
All right, should we do another round?
Yeah.
Right.
Do we want to keep on doing bad with good, or do we want to start off?
Let's do one more round of bad moments in good movies and then switch.
Okay, cool.
All right, and I'm going to cheat by doing 2. Just because I feel like if we don't mention that shot of the rat at the end of The Departed, that people will give us crap for not mentioning it, because it's just one of the worst moments in a good movie I've ever seen, and I tune out at every point when that pan up starts.
Luckily, the movie is over at that point, but you're right. It's one of those, what were they thinking moments? Like, oh yeah, it'd be great. There's a rat walking back in.
This is one of the greatest directors of our time, and you might as well have thrown a hammer at the screen, right?
Right.
Anyway, I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that for credibility's sake.
My only theory on this is that maybe Mark Wahlberg put it in there and like, symbolism, and it's like, and that's his character, to put a rat in somebody's apartment after he kills them. But that's the only thing that I can think of that would make that. Doing? Yeah.
All right. So my final, for now, unless we do this again down the road, bad moment in a good movie is The Sting. Now, this is a movie
that's a great one.
I love. I saw it at a very young age and I've seen many times in my life. It's one of my favorite movies, but this part that sticks in my craw is that Robert Redford's character is sort of being hunted the whole movie. You see this guy with gloves and a gun. There's basically some kind of assassin that's hunting him or chasing him. And the movie just can't help itself from doing one more rug out from under you, reveal. There's already 12 of them in this movie. They didn't need this one, but it turns out the assassin isn't an assassin. He's a protector. And the assassin is actually the waitress that Robert Redford's been banging for the last couple of nights. And it's such a stupid thing for a character that's supposed to be so smart and street savvy to fall for. And it just always stands out to me as completely unnecessary in a movie that would be otherwise perfect. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it really bothers me.
Well, and I've seen The Sting a couple of times. It's never been anything that I really pondered, so I don't have much more to add to that, but I can see how that would, be bothersome because, yeah, you would think that a guy like that would be wise to those type of things. Redford is always playing characters like that, by the way. He's like, he should be wiser to the woman that comes into his life or whatever.
He sleeps with her the night before, but she doesn't try to kill him until she accidentally bumps into him in an alley the next day. Like, why didn't you kill him in his sleep? That was really dumb.
Maybe she just wanted to get laid, man. She just wanted to get laid.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. And then we can go ahead with the killing. I have to get my rocks off before I kill somebody.
All right, Barrett, give us your last one.
Your rocks off?
Yeah, that's right.
I got to watch The Force Awakens again when it came out on Blu-ray this week. You haven't gotten to the Sin video yet, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But
I'm sure whatever you're about to say is something that I brought up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just is really annoying to me. So we've already talked about this in the second podcast, but Han Solo dies in this movie, and he dies it takes forever for him to die. He's got to walk all the fucking way out there, and then he's got to, have a conversation. And meanwhile, everybody is standing around like a bunch of fucking dick asses,
right?
Just like looking at this conversation,
yeah,
and doing nothing before or after. All Chewbacca does is shoot him once. He's still standing right there. Kylo Ren is still standing right there, injured. And then Chewbacca just turns away. He's like, all right, that must have got him.
And that's, I recently went through this, for sin writing purposes or whatever. There's that moment. Now the thing is, the thing that the movie does, and this still doesn't make sense though. The thing the movie does is suggest that after he shoots him, the stormtroopers are like, oh, Chewbacca, better start shooting him. But the thing is, Chewbacca twice growls and screams or whatever when Han Solo, like you just now figured out he's up there? He was yelling.
What happened? He's been staring at him the whole time.
Right.
Everybody gets in their positions and can look on this entire theater.
Yeah, and if you're Chewbacca, don't you want to shoot that guy before you even start like messing around with stormtroopers who aren't going to hit you anyway? You've dealt with stormtroopers a million times; they're not going to hit you.
Stand still.
You can just stand still. So yeah, you're right. That whole thing is set up, where it's like you're right. The long walk down the whatchamacallit thing or whatever, and
it's a death bridge. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, death bridge. Yeah,
you only like build that thing so someone can die.
Right. It's so impractical. But yeah, I didn't like that at all.
All right, Chris, give us your last one.
Okay. I'm going to go with Fargo and the Mike Yanagita scene.
Oh, great one.
Now this is another one that I've looked into over the years, and I've heard the explanation, and it's not good enough. Okay, so Mike Yanagita is this sort of like stupid plot thread. It's not really a plot thread, actually. It's just he sees Marge on TV and he remembers her from high school and he calls her up in the middle of the night, and then they decide, well, let's go get some lunch and catch up and everything. So there's this whole scene where Mike Yanagita they're at this restaurant and they just sitting there talking, and then you find out he's a bit of a creepy dude. They're sitting there talking and having fun, and then he gets up and he sits right next to her, and she's like, well, maybe you should sit on the other side. I'd prefer that, and he's like, oh yeah, whatever. And so it's just this whole like creepy scene that they throw in there for a few laughs, and then he's gone. But then she finds out through a friend that all the stuff that he said at that lunch wasn't true at all. And he's like, and she's like, well, you never know. Apparently, and this is what I've read over the years, is that, this scene is so that she realizes that the William H. Macy character is not what he seems. So it makes her go back to the car dealership and ask him some more questions. But for me, I feel like just good old fashioned police work would have sufficed. Like sitting there and you're going, you know what? That missing car is really strange to me. Let's go back to that. Instead, it's like, oh, I need to have this stalker from my past, and we have to have a whole scene making fun of him.
Hey, consider this. They could have gone with a dead George Clooney there, and they chose not to.
They could have. If only he was like not ER famous at the time. Like, they could have put him in there.
They just needed somebody to have a realization.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable though. That scene is just gross. Like, and if there's no purpose, it's just awkward.
It's out of left field. It just doesn't belong in the movie. And even if you do have an explanation such as that, it's just like, well, why can't she just have some intuition and think, that missing car is really the thing I need to look at here, and just go. But that's one. That's another one.
All right.
I'm just envisioning George Clooney in a spacesuit sitting at the other side of the table with Marge.
Yeah.
I wish I could Photoshop.
Launching his landing.
All right, so let's transition. Good moments in bad movies.
Yes.
Now, I have a lot of what I think would be populist responses to this on my list, but I'm going to at least start out with what I think are the most Jeremy responses to this question. And the first one is the movie My Fellow Americans, which you should never watch this movie. There's no reason to watch this movie, but it was back when they would make any movie Jack Lemmon wanted to make.
Right.
And so it's him and it's James Garner, and they're both former presidents, and they're somehow wrapped up in this campaign for the current presidency. And there's a mystery and yada, yada. It's not good at all. But John Hurd is in it. It's the dad from Home Alone.
Right.
And he's great. And he's really stupid. And at the end, he says this line. He's trying to reveal that he's smarter than everybody thinks. And he goes, everyone thinks I'm an idiot, but nobody knows it was all just a big facade. And I laughed for probably 10 minutes when that happened, because it's just such a stupid, God, it's not even that great of a line, but his delivery is so wonderful because he truly believes he's smarter than you think he is. And then he says that. And I laughed out loud when it happened, and I love that joke. All right, Barrett.
All right, so we're doing good moments in bad movies.
That's correct.
Right. So we all determined that Batman versus Superman is bad, and I don't want to pile on it. In fact, I want to give it a little bit of love, because there is one funny moment in there. Really the only thing that seems like organic and natural in the entire movie. And it's after Batman saves Martha, Superman's mom, from Mr. Firethrower Man. Mm-hmm. And there's this moment where he's on top of her, shielding her with his cape. And he said, don't worry, I'm with your friend, or with your son. I'm his friend. She said, I figured, cape.
Yeah.
That's the really, and our friend Jonathan actually texted me the exact same thing as I was texting it to him. That was the only really light moment of the movie that just like, that's kind of nice. So there was, a few seconds of frivolity in that flaming turd.
Flaming turd. Yeah, that was fun, and yeah, could have used a lot more of that. And yeah, what else is there to say?
All right, Chris, you're up.
Okay, guys, have you ever seen Southland Tales?
Yes, but I vowed never to remember it.
Yeah,
that is a fucked up movie.
Yes, it is. We had a question from somebody who was asking, the directors that we thought would be something or whatever, and Richard Kelly, after he did Donnie Darko, was that guy, was like, oh, he's a very interesting filmmaker. And then he goes off and he does Southland Tales and then he does The Box, and The Box isn't very good either. But Southland Tales is so batshit crazy that there are moments in that movie that are just memorable. And one of them, I'm gonna name both of them from this movie, but one of them is Justin Timberlake doing a lip sync of The Killer's All These Things That I've Done.
Yes.
And it's done in this sort of musical way because you have all these women in like sexy nurse outfits and like white blonde wigs or whatever dancing around him and stuff. And but it's just the way his sort of his intensity as he faces the camera and sings that song, breaks the fourth wall basically, and everything. It's something that puts you in a sort of a dreamlike state when you watch it. And I saw this movie in theaters. I actually was at a point going, this might turn around after that scene. And it never does. It's so bad. But that was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, this is something I can get into. It doesn't make any sense, but I love it.
He's actually on drugs in that scene, right?
What, like his character?
Yeah, his character.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because they're selling some sort of like red liquid something in there or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's another one in there. There's another scene, and I think it is meant to be this funny, but it's so bizarre. And even if it's unintentionally funny, it's one of the best moments in the movie, though. Bai Ling shows up. They're at a party and Dwayne Johnson is in there. Dwayne Johnson goes up to Bai Ling, and Bai Ling says something like, two identical souls walking the face of the earth, coexisting in the same dimension of chaos. What will happen if they shake hands? And Dwayne Johnson is like, the fourth dimension would collapse upon itself. You stupid bitch. And he pulls her in and kisses her. And that was something I was sitting there just like not enjoying this movie at all. And then that scene comes up and I was just like, where did that come from? And so, yeah, Southland Tales has some just moments of just craziness.
This is a dangerous topic, man, because I'm gonna be tempted to watch some of these, and we really probably shouldn't be encouraging people to watch most of these movies in this list.
Yeah, but we will inadvertently do that. A lot of these things is that, like, I'm curious, is it really as bad as they say? I don't know. Southland Tales has a cult following. There's people who love it, but those moments there are just, those are the ones that make me go, okay, that movie's not total garbage. There's some moments that I love about it, but it's not good.
Well, I'm going to go with a movie that is total garbage that I would also encourage you to watch. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And that's Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I could easily find 50 moments from this movie for this discussion because I adore this movie and it's not good. But the one that I wanted to pick to talk about is Edgar Friendly's Rant. And this is when John Spartan has gone underground to look for Simon Phoenix, and he's got Sandra Bullock and Ben Bratt with him. And there's this whole society of people living underground that they have known as vandals, because they vandalize Taco Bell and all this other stuff and steal food. But it turns out they just don't want to live under the authoritarian rule of the leader of this perfect society above. And if you want to be free, you have to live underground. And Dennis Leary is sort of the de facto leader of these people. And it's at the height of his Dennis Leary-ness. Like, do you remember those commercials he used to do on MTV where he would just rant for like a minute?
Yeah.
Well, this is basically the screenwriter said, I'm going to leave this spot open for you and you just do your thing. And John Spartan's like, this is why everybody's down here. And Edgar Friendly just goes off on this. I don't remember the whole thing. I used to be able to quote it, but it's the speech where he's like, I want high cholesterol. I want to eat bacon and butter and buckets of cheese. And it's the most Dennis Leary thing ever. And I love it. It's like the perfect casting for that character in that moment. Just perfect amount of over the top. Anyway, I just love that moment.
And I remember those commercials. Most of them, I think they all had that tagline where I think you hear me knocking, then I think I'm coming in. You know, that type. Isn't that
okay?
Isn't the okay and all that? And Dennis Leary was basically hired to do that in every movie back in the early '90s. Judgment Night is another movie. I don't know if any of you guys saw that. I love Judgment Night.
Terrific
Judgment
soundtrack.
Night's another. Yes, a lot of like rap and rock duos.
And Emilio Estevez, right?
Yep, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s in it. But that's just one of those movies that it's a perfect B movie, and Dennis Leary's the bad guy in it, and he's Dennis Leary. So
Now he's
love
doing
it.
truck commercials.
Yeah, now he's doing truck commercials.
Well, he also, that show about firemen that I never watched got him a lot of acclaim as an actor.
Rescue Me.
Yeah, I never watched it, but I think he grew a lot out of that persona. But man, he made the most of it.
Barrett.
I've given a lot of thought about this movie, and it is bad. And you can argue with me, but it's bad. Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, I don't like it.
It's not.
It's a bad movie, but there's so much to like in there. And basically anything Peter McNichol's character, Janos, says is kind of gold to me. And there's a few of those, but he's at one point he's already possessed by Vigo, the character in the painting and everything. And he goes up to Dana and he's like trying to convince her to come along with her. And eventually he's like, and you will be the mother of the ruler of the world. Doesn't it sound nice? And he's got this wacky possessed demeanor. And I love that moment. And he's just completely insane at that point. And then afterwards, cheating because I could give a lot of moments from this. But after he gets, slimed and comes to his senses and everything, he walks around and he's like, why am I dripping with goo?
You did a pretty good impression of him.
And then they start hugging and everything. Yeah. So I love, that's one of the most rewatchable movies that is not good. I don't like it overall. The Statue of Liberty thing is ridiculous, but I'll watch everything that Bill Murray does at the beginning, the world of the psychic.
Yeah.
He signs off, but he's like, next week, hairless cats. Weird.
Yeah.
I love that stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Escape from L.A.
Wow.
So Escape from New York is a perfect B movie. Great John Carpenter movie. Escape from LA, I don't know what the impetus was to make a sequel for this in the 90s. Talk about, that's another one where the aging of film, the way films are made, that's really a stark contrast when you see B movies doing it.
Yeah.
But Escape from LA is just awful. And it's obviously just sort of everybody got there for the paycheck and everything, and that's fine. There is one scene in there, and I don't remember the circumstances, but they put Snake, Kurt Russell's character, into a basketball, they put him on a basketball court. And he has to get 5 baskets before the time runs out or something like that. He has to go end to end. So he has to score 1 basket and then go all the way to the other end of the court and score another one, and then so on and so forth in like 30 seconds or something. And first off, it's batshit insane because you would never think of Snake as anybody who's maybe even seen a basketball before. He's probably never dribbled one before, but he's in this task now where he has to do this. So he goes in there, he makes a couple layups, but time is running out. So he starts to have to move it up a little bit. On the 4th one, he throws a mid-court shot that goes straight down into the goal. And then he's got like 5 seconds left or whatever. And so he's at the full end of the court and just hauls this one-armed 80-foot shot all the way and hits it. And it's just, I was dying laughing when I saw this. It's obviously obviously never was supposed to be something realistic or anything. It was just supposed to make you laugh, and it did. It succeeded.
Steve Buscemi's in that movie, right?
Yes, he is. He's even in that scene.
I saw that in the theater. I regretted it.
I did too.
All right, well, let's go one more round so we keep them even from the last discussion.
All right.
Everybody's going to do one more good moment in a bad movie. And this is a tough call for me. Again, I have 5 or 6 that we've made sins about in videos that I'm going to go ahead and skip because at least somewhere publicly we've acknowledged that I like that moment, or you do. So I'm going to go with Iron Man 3, which is terrible. I know that there's some conglomerate of people who probably love it just because they
no need to be a pussy about it.
Well, yeah, seriously. But the moment when Tony's captured and his suit is arriving like one piece at a time, and he's basically trying to escape, fight, and get the rest of his suit to him, I thought was really fun. And it was the one moment in that movie where I found myself smiling at sort of the way they showed him having to be inventive with first only just one hand pusher thing, and now he has to basically fling himself around the room waiting for the rest of the suit. I really enjoyed that scene, and I hated that movie.
Yeah, and what's so disappointing about Iron Man 3 is that Shane Black and that is something. One of the early tells that it doesn't matter who you put in to these things. It's really Marvel is the director of the movie.
Right.
Because if Shane Black made that movie by himself, I bet we would have had a way more fun trip on that one.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Barrett?
I'm trying to figure out which one I want to, because it's 2 big movies. You want a Star Wars or you want a Matrix?
Oh, do The Matrix.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
Matrix
from the
is
Matrix.
a good movie.
No, this is from the Matrix Reloaded.
Okay, good.
Okay. So what I like about there's a decent amount to like in the Matrix Reloaded, but it's overall a terrible movie from really the start to the finish. But what I do like is the introduction of the Keymaker and the fact that, and it goes into this broader philosophy of you can't really know somebody until you fight them. And that's probably just a bunch of bullshit. But the fight between Canoe and the Keymaker is really intriguing, actually. It's unlike really any other fight that you see in the whole series,
I like how you just went on and just called him Canoe and just...
Yeah, well, that's just...
that's what he is. That's what he is Canoe.
Exactly. But yeah, no, that's a very, very good moment in a pretty bad movie overall, and a completely nonsensical movie. But that was kind of a moment of clarity where you get your head up.
Well, and I wonder, I think everybody who thinks about film in a level-headed, fair way has at least one movie where they liked it more than they should have, and over time realized they were just fanboying. And this was that movie for me, because I was such a fan of The Matrix. I saw Matrix Reloaded. I walked out. I went home, like, that was freaking awesome. And it was like 3 a.m. And then the next day is when I find out everybody hated it. And I was like, what? You're crazy. This is awesome. And then, of course, the more I see it and the more distance I get from that first viewing and my own fanboyness, the more I can agree it's a train wreck, man. I don't disagree.
I was the exact same way when I watched it. When I was in that denial watch. Yeah. When you're watching it and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Hey, that's pretty cool right there. Oh, that's cool. And then afterwards you're like, well, yeah, I guess I liked it. And then later you're like, oh yeah, this is not good. Not good.
Yeah, that was, I totally agree with you though. I think the introduction of the Keymaker is really good. And there are several bright spots in the film, but that's one of the good ones.
Yeah.
All right, Chris.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go with Woody Allen here. There are 2 movies. Woody Allen. It doesn't really matter like how if he's coming out with a bad movie, he always has like at least one good line in it. And so like I could actually come up with 3, but like in Hollywood Ending's not a very, it's one of his worst, I think. Although today I looked at it on the IMDb and it had like a 6.7 or something like that. Which means there's obviously people who love it. I remember watching it and going, man, this movie's terrible. And then there's one line at the end. So the movie is about, Woody Allen is a director It's a real stretch for him as an actor. But I think he's blind. And I think that's it. I think he's blind. He's a director, and so a lot of the things are getting shot out of focus, and he doesn't know, what's going on his set and everything. And so the movie, when it gets made, is like just a whole bunch of stuff out of focus, and of course nobody likes it. And so the movie comes out in America. It's a huge bomb and everything. But then at the very end, somebody gives him a newspaper and says, the French love your movie. And he's like, really? And he looks at the newspaper and he's like, oh, wow. He's like, thank God the French exist. It's just one of my favorite lines ever.
It's a very Woody Allen thing to say too. I'm sure he said that actually many times.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a couple like in Small Time Crooks, which is another movie I don't really like, although I know that's one that some people do, but Small Time Crooks is after they get rich and everything, and they're obviously they're all dunces and terrible people and everything, but they're living high society for the first time. Woody Allen, and this is in the trailer too, where he goes, "You know what I've always wanted to do? I've always wanted to learn how to spell Connecticut."
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah, and the movie Scoop is the other one that I think of. Not very good. That came out the same year. There was 3 magic movies that came out one year, and Scoop is the forgotten one. But The Prestige, The Illusionist, and Scoop all came out in the same year. And there's a part where he says something like, "He's like, I used to be a." He says, "I used to be a Marxist, but now I'm a narcissist," or something like that. It's a classic Woody Allen thing to say.
Awesome. So should we move into questions?
I think we should.
All right.
Let's do it.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
Groovy. So the first one, I'm gonna read it as it was written, so that will provide leeway for us in answering how we choose. But the asker says, "What is everyone's favorite musical movies?"
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he means musicals, which is how I'm going to go. But if you want to do movies that are about music, like something like Almost Famous, I'm not going to argue with you. But I have 2 answers for my favorite musical. The first is old school, and that's White Christmas. My mother and her sister adored this movie, and so I have seen it every year of my life, multiple times. It is a family tradition, and I don't think you can do that and not fall in love with the movie.
It's a beautiful movie. That's a terrific movie from just with the music and just on its own. It's really good.
It's not bad. I think it's good. I'm just saying a lot of people might say, "What about Singing in the Rain?" Which I also love. But my very favorite musical of all time periods is the Muppet Christmas Carol. Because it's short. It's funny, and every single song is singable and has a great hook. It's some of the best Muppet songs collected in one single movie of all of the Muppet movies, and that has become an annual watch for me. So that's my answer.
Oh, that's inspiring. I'm going to start watching the Muppet Christmas Carol every year.
It's awesome.
Barrett?
It's in the singing of a street corner choir.
I interpreted this as musicals too, and it's Grease. Grease is the best musical of all time. I have a lot of musicals that I actually like, but nothing really approaches the scope and the social issues and the performances and the iconography of Grease. And I kind of tried to challenge myself on this, but it's Grease. That's a terrific musical. Yeah. And of course it got more popular because of the live performance this year, but it's timeless. When you go back and you watch it at any time over the last 30, 40 years, it holds up extremely, extremely well.
All right. So my number one, and I don't know if this is polarizing or not, but Moulin Rouge is probably my favorite. I know that it's generally well received, but there are a lot of people who absolutely hate it.
Like me.
Yeah. I just think it's one of those that's just visually stunning, and like I like the arrangements they do with the songs, the existing classic songs in there. The movie can be too much, so when people tell me they don't like it, it's not like, oh, come on, man, you got to love this movie. But for me, I fell in love with Moulin Rouge when I watched it.
That's one of those weird movies that I view in halves. Like the first half, I love, and then the second half, I can just do without most of that. And but I totally get what you're saying, like visually, and I think it was pretty unique for its time in the way that it blended those current existing hit songs into the arrangements that you're talking about. I had never seen that kind of thing before in a musical, to my knowledge.
They would go and change from song to song to song and make it all into one thing.
Yep.
The tango scene is really terrific in that movie. I didn't like really the rest of the way it was executed. Obviously, you're right. Visually, it's beautiful, but the tango scene was really, really impactful, actually.
Yeah, there's another one that I think of whenever I hear musicals, and it's not one that you would traditionally put into the genre, but Nashville is another one that is basically a musical, but the reason why nobody ever would call it that is because it's not like they're not sitting there having a conversation and then break out in a song. It's just, there's a bunch of songs. There's a bunch of musical numbers in it. And, there was I think the one song, I'm Easy, the Keith Carradine, song got nominated.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was performed at the Exit Inn, and it's a really good song too. And it goes really well with the story that's going on in there, because he's the guy in the movie that's banging all these chicks, and like they're all at the Exit Inn that night listening to him sing that song, and they all think it's about her. They all think it's about them when they hear it. It's got a lot of old country tunes in it, but there are a lot of good ones in there too.
It's the old Keith Carradine, Lily Tomlin, Shelley Duvall love triangle.
Yeah, classic.
I've heard it once. I've heard it a million times.
Yeah. Well, and Lily Tomlin's married to Warren Beatty in the movie too. It's one of those okay, I can.
Ned Beatty.
Yeah. Oh, right. Ned Beatty. Sorry, Ned Beatty. I'm Warren Beatty. The fuck?
Those Beattys all look alike.
Yeah, they do. Especially those two.
All right, another question. Somebody wants us to talk about the most disturbing scenes we've seen in movies. And I feel like I could answer this with a bunch of different things, but the one that jumps out at me immediately is in American History X, when he puts that guy's
I know
jaw,
exactly where you're going on this.
Yeah, he puts this guy's jaw around a concrete curb, and then essentially jumps up in the air and slams down on the guy's face, or back of his head with his foot, breaking the guy's face and jaw. And it's such a shocking, unnecessarily violent act. Like, if you want to beat the guy up, go ahead, but this is just criminally insane behavior here. And it really, I can't even watch that scene. Even talking about it right now, I'm getting a little bit of the shivers. It really disturbed me.
The way they do it too, it is that you see the guy and you see his teeth touching the curb. Right. And they don't actually show it. They cut away, but it's almost worse. It's kind of like how they do with Fight Club when Brad Pitt's getting his beating in that movie, where you're just seeing reactions and people going, oh, like that. It's like that. Yeah, that's brutal. Barrett, you got one?
Oh, I'm just thinking about hearing the teeth. All right, we got to stop talking about
that. Yeah, let's move on.
You mentioned Snowpiercer earlier. There's a scene in Snowpiercer that I cannot watch, and it was featured in the end of Saving Private Ryan too. It's where somebody plunges a knife into somebody's chest while they're watching. Like Adam Goldberg's character at the end of Saving Private Ryan. It happened to Gray at the end of Snowpiercer, which I think was bullshit, by the way. The kid's like, an athletic marvel, and this middle-aged mutant is just anyway, that's a whole other story. But that kills me. It's the same. I think, and I didn't go back and watch it, but I think at the end of The Strangers, I think there's something kind of like that too, where they slowly, that gets me every time. It's just awful.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen Irreversible?
Maybe. Doesn't ring any bells.
It's a French movie. It has Monica Bellucci.
I know
it was remade in an American version, right?
I'm not sure if it was remade or not, but I do know that it does the Memento type thing where it shows the end of the movie first and then it goes backwards. And the one scene that always is something that I'm never going to forget is they're at a nightclub, there's a scene where a guy gets his head beat in with a fire extinguisher, and you see it on screen. They don't cut away. It's pretty brutal, and the head just turns to mush in front of you, and it's horrible. There is a weird, like, you can see subtitles during that beating where there's somebody that says awesome in the background.
Thank God.
And it's just sickening. The guy who directed it did another movie called Enter the Void, which is if you just want a real trippy, headache-inducing movie, watch Enter the Void. If you need a headache, just go ahead and watch that movie. It sort of reminds me of the stuff we went through with Hardcore Henry this weekend. But that guy's an interesting director. But that's some brutal, brutal stuff. That's the most disturbing thing I've ever seen.
All right. Awesome. Gross. Let's move on to something. Let's do one last question before we wrap it up. And they want to know movies we might have ever walked out of.
Okay.
And I'll start in case I'm springing that on either of you. I've only ever walked out of 2 movies, and both were very near the end. I don't have any, like, I know film lovers who are like, oh, never walk out of a movie. I watched the whole thing to the end. That's not me. I just, I always, like some of the moments we've talked about tonight, the good moments in bad movies, even a piece of trash can make you laugh. And so I'm always willing to give it a shot all the way through the end for the most part. But 2 movies just grated me to the point where I had to leave before they were over. And one of them was actually Batman versus Superman.
Oh, wow.
God. So there's a shot apparently at the end where the painting is upside down. And then there's a shot apparently of dirt moving around Superman's grave. I missed both of those. Because right before that, I turned to my friend and said, that's it for me, and got up and walked out. Because, I knew it was pretty close to the end. I knew I wasn't going to have to wait very long for him, but that movie had just battered me and bruised me to the point where I don't even care. I don't care if there's a credit scene. I'm out. I've paid my time.
Yeah, I was actually wondering about that because there was a point where you said, well, Superman dies, and then you didn't even bring up the point at the very end. I was like, there's that part at the end, right?
Right. And then the other one was a little movie most of you probably forgot called Simply Irresistible.
Yes.
Starred Sarah Michelle Gellar and I think the dude from Alias. And she's a chef, but there's magic involved.
You talking about Michael Vartan or whatever?
Yeah. And so this movie's just stupid. It's aggressively stupid. And there's a crab. And anyway, right before there's a magical crab, and it helps her cooking. And at the end, there's some black tie party, and it cuts to a shot of the goddamn crab in a tux, dead. And I went, nope, I'm out. And I was there with Josh, and Josh and I both stood up and walked out, and we were done. It was only like 5 minutes from the end, but that's the only 2 times I've ever left in the middle of a movie.
Barrett, do you have any?
Yeah, so I got an 8-year-old, and when you have an 8-year-old, you see a lot of shitty movies and over the 8 years that he's been alive.
For sure.
One of them was Cars 3, otherwise known as Planes.
Oh, yeah.
And that movie just absolutely grated on me so much that I told my wife and my kid, you guys enjoy. I'm going to leave about probably 30 minutes left. So I just went out and played video games in the lobby and waited for them to come out. And I felt very good about it.
I think that was the right choice.
Yeah,
exactly. I watched it about a dozen times on DVD after that.
Of course you did. Of course you did. I've probably done this 4 or 5 times for various reasons, and mainly as a projectionist at a movie theater. Now, a few of those were not because I was hating the movie, although they weren't good movies anyway. A lot of times I would get to the point of just exhaustion, and I'd just be like, if there's something wrong with this movie tomorrow, then fix it, But that was the point of being a projectionist, was to watch the movies and make sure they were good for the public the next day and all that. But there is one that I walked out on because it was bad. And it was the first time I ever did this. I wasn't tired or anything. I just said, fuck this movie. It was Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
And I watched probably 30 minutes of that movie. And I just said, I can't take this anymore. And I stopped it. Now, this is not a digital print. This is a regular print. And you don't really want to, you don't want to like keep it running overnight and everything. So I basically what I did was the equivalent of rewinding the movie, and just put it back in the center and then just told people, hey, watch it when it gets to this point and then you're good. And whatever. But yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, I couldn't, I know that it was Thora Birch and Jeremy Irons and Marlon Wayans were all in that movie. It was an awful experience and I couldn't take it. So that's when I walked out on.
You're going to get retroactively fired for dereliction of duty.
Yeah, absolutely. There were plenty of others though that like I was falling asleep in them. And I remember Hidalgo. Do you remember Hidalgo?
Oh yeah. The horse movie with Aragorn.
Viggo Mortensen's in it. And I remember, I'm watching it and it's a super long movie. Like, it may be like shorter than I'm remembering it, but it felt like the 3 hours long. And, I just noticed at one point I was asleep. I woke up. And I was watching it on a certain projector, like when splices would go through, like the film would fall off a roller or whatever. And it was scratching the right side of the screen, not like terribly or anything, not like anything that customers would really notice, but like that was the other part of it, was that this movie was awful. And like every time the reel changed, it would like start scratching the print and I'd have to go back upstairs and fix it and everything. And it was just awful. I think I ended up not watching the rest of it. I think once it got through the last splice, and I knew it wasn't going to fall off anymore. I was like, yeah, just fuck it. I'm not going to watch the rest of this. You know what? There is one thing I do want to address on this thing. The one question that we've gotten a couple of times, and I'll just address it really quick. The one about me doing the voice on the Sins videos.
Oh yeah.
I've seen this question come up a couple of times. The reason why Jeremy does it all the time at this point is that at some point you've got to realize what your brand is on a channel. And we were experimenting a lot in the early days, and we thought that there was even a time where we thought we would do something like an everything right with and all that.
Right.
And when it got to Prometheus, it's like, well, I guess it's my turn to do the voice. So I did it. And I could just tell in the comments that people were like, I'm used to Jeremy's voice. We want to hear Jeremy. And it just became a decision at that point where it's like, okay, let's just do Jeremy because that's the brand. Jeremy's the brand of his voice is the brand of this. And, so I've not done one since. And mainly also, if you look at all the guest voices we've ever gotten on this thing, even the Neil deGrasse Tyson, there's just people who get upset when it's not Jeremy. Yeah. So you have Neil deGrasse Tyson. People went through the roof on Kevin Smith, which still pisses me off to this day because I thought he did a great job. Yeah. And it upsets me a lot. But then, I remember the Matthew Santoro one too. Nobody liked that. Yeah. Of course, the Matthew Santoro one, I think the way that was thrown together was what hurt us most on that. But yeah, ultimately you just had to make a decision and say, you're the guy. Like if we had started it off by saying it was back and forth or whatever, I think people would have gotten used to it. But by the time we did Prometheus, we had already done enough to just say, all right, let's just make you the voice.
Well, and a lot of it was circumstantial, like, just because I think the original intention was always to go every other one and just take turns. But you were traveling a lot. You had some family issues and stuff. And so just logistics caused me to do the first 3 or 4. And then when it came to, okay, Chris is settled, let's get his narration on this one and start going every other one. Like you said, that the audience had sort of already determined the voice was part of the brand.
Yeah. And I can take it. Like I can take my licks. People were just like, this is not the same. This sucks. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it wasn't because of that. It was, I mean, because Jeremy certainly took his licks when we first did it. It's like I hate this voice. This voice is terrible. Now I can't live without it.
Right.
And so it's really just about familiarity and comfort and everything, and that's the reason why I don't do it. I wish I could, just to give him a relief.
Maybe we'll go full circle, because it's maybe the fans today view it as such a treasure that there's only one Chris video, that the rarity of it might allow, a future Sins video to be narrated by Chris. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, who knows? And I'm sure that we're really sort of paying attention to a minority there. There's probably a lot. It's a lot of people when we look at the comments, but probably most people are like, well, that's the Sins video for me. I love it. And, and they move on.
Right.
But for some people, it's just like, I can't deal with that without my Jeremy fix.
Yes.
But anyway, that's the reason why that's that. And I just felt like we should answer that question since we've gotten it a couple of times. That is the Sincast for this week. Signing off with Chris Atkins and Jeremy Scott and Barrett Scher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Why are my drippings with goo?
Why do you like them so much?
I was all about Hardcore Henry. Now I watched it and I'm like, fuck me.
Vince and everybody ended up just getting him a bunch of whores to change his mind.
That's like every episode of that show, though, right?
Yeah.
Vince and guys end up getting him a bunch of whores.
Pretty much.
Did you see the one girl who said, I decided to watch Election, and right at the first really vulgar moment my mom walked in?
I'm sure it's that her pussy is so wet.
That's so wrong. You're not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
I remember when I was watching Training Day with my wife. I've probably told you this story before, but we were just dating at the time, and we were at her dad's house, and I didn't really know her dad super well at that point. And he decides to wander in and check out the movie right after Denzel abandons Ethan Hawke with the Mexican guys. And they're like, do you like getting your shit packed in? Huh? I'm just squirming. He's never going to let her see me again.
Man. Dude, you know what? One of the funniest dad moments I've ever experienced was when I was a kid. And I was a friend of mine who, he was the friend who got to see the R-rated movies and stuff. And
right.
And so I think we were on 13 maybe or something like that. And we were about to watch, I think it was Bloodsport. So we're sitting there watching Bloodsport, and this guy's dad comes in. He goes, John, what are you watching? And he goes, Bloodsport. And he's like, is there any nudity in it? And he's like, Jean-Claude Van Damme shows his butt. And he's like, well, okay. And he just walks out.